So today's lesson is over solving, just like we've been doing. And actually, these first 4 lessons that are on the quiz are all solving in different forms. But this is solving equations with fractions. Now, I will tell you there's a couple different ways to solve these. I'll talk about some of them, but this is what I think is probably the easiest, especially once you get good at it, once you get in the groove. But before we get into that, I need to go over least common multiples. Question, at least I don't think so. Maybe I'm wrong. But I don't think I have a question that says, what's the least common between these two numbers? But you need to know this, and it's helpful to know this for the next section or the next thing we're doing. So least common multiple is almost the opposite of a factor. So if I have factors of 24, those are numbers that multiply to be 24. So like 1 and 24, 2 and 12. So 2 is a factor of 24 because 2 times 12. 3 is a factor of 24 because 3 times 8. Multiples of 24 are 24 times 1 is 24. 24 times 2 is 48. 24 times 3 is 72, so on and so forth. With factors, you have a limited amount of factors that can go into a number, but a multiple, you can have as many as you want. You can keep listing them, and you can keep going forever and ever and ever. So when I'm looking for the least common multiple, one way to think of it as finding a common denominator. So if you guys had questions before and you're looking for a common denominator, sort of what you're doing here. So the least common multiple between 3 and 4, don't know. 3 times 10. So 3 times 1. Which is so 3 times 1, 3. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times 4 is 12. 3 times 5 is 15. 3 times 6 is 8. So on and so forth. Like I said, forever. Then multiples of 4 are 4 times 1, 4 times 2, 4 times 3, 4 times 4, 4 times 5, 4 times 6, so on and so forth. The smallest number that's common is this 12. Now, this one, it just so happened to be that 3 and 4, if you multiply them together, you get your least common multiple. That does not happen every time. It won't happen on the next one. I will tell you a little bit just to foreshadow. Technically speaking, when we go on to the other problems, you don't actually need the least common multiple. You just need one of the common multiples. So if you would have done number 2, 6 times 10 is 60, and use that on the problems coming up, you'll still get the right answer. You won't have to deal with bigger numbers than what we will. Multiple is 12 for that. And the 6. You could also, if you don't know, you could list the multiples of 6 until you get one that you know is 10. So like 6 times 1, 6 times 2, 6 times 3, 6 times 4. 6 times 5 is 60, or sorry, is 30. 30 I know is divisible by 10. So that's one way you could do it. So the least multiple is 30. Or again, some of them you won't have to look too hard at. Some of them you guys will know pretty much right away. I want to make sure you realize that even if it is one of the numbers, it can be a multiple. 8 times 1 is 8. So the least common multiple for this one is 8. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 1 is 8. The last two, you will have something like this where you have 3 numbers that you have to find the least common multiple between all of them. This is where it gets a little bit harder to just multiply together. So again, like 3, if you would use 4 times 8 is 32, that would have worked. But all of a sudden with 4, if you use 4 times 5 times 10, I mean, yes, it would work. You're just now multiplying by 200. So if that's what you want to do, that it'll work. Calculators, so maybe it's not that intimidating. Between 4, 5, and 10, the least common multiple would be 20. 4 times 5 is 20, 5 times 4 is 20, and 10 times 2 is 20. And number 5, between 2, 3, and 4. At first, I thought it would be 6, but 4 doesn't have a multiple of 6. And then I thought maybe it was 8, but 3 doesn't have a multiple of 8. So this one ends up being 12. So again, that's the building blocks that we're going to use for these next ones. Are there any questions over the multiples? Everyone okay? So I made these 4 steps into solving these. So again, you don't have to do these 4 steps. You don't have to, you can do whichever way you want, honestly, as long as you show your work. But when you're taking the quiz tomorrow, if you see one of these and you don't remember how to do it, follow these steps. That's the reason I put them there. That's the reason I do it like that. First step, I should say before I start, I know some of you guys, if you look at number 6, you would subtract by 2 and then multiply by 2 over 1. That would still work. That still is fine. But I wanted to put one that was a little bit of a more basic one to get an introduction to this. Step 0, writing this with space. You do not actually have to do that step. It is not required, but I highly recommend it, especially if you're one of those people that didn't do very well the last test. I would be doing whatever I can to make sure you do well. So I would take the extra work to do it, writing out that first step. So when I say extra space, I just have 1 over 2x, then I leave some space, plus 2 is equal to, I leave some space, and then space. Because now I'm going to go through and multiply every single one of those things. That's step 2. But before we do that, we need to find multiple, so we're multiplying by. Well, this one, it's the least common multiple of your diameters. 2, so that is the least common multiple. So these are the least common multiple, which is you don't need to label the least common multiple like I did. If I was doing a test or a quiz, I wouldn't bother with that. But since it's your notes, I thought it might be kind of nice if you could understand where that 2 is coming from. You forget and look over your notes later. From here, your next step is to cancel and reduce, and then it'll be able to solve like normal. So when I say cancel and reduce, 2 in the numerator, 2 in the denominator, so cancel. Now keep in mind it's multiply, so they kind of are together. I could cancel this 2 in the numerator with a different denominator over here. The 2 and the 2 cancel, so I have left is 1x. X. 2 times 2 is positive 4. And 2 times 6 is 12. Make sure you multiply everything by that 2. Remember we talked about earlier, if you do something on the left-hand side, you have to do it on the right-hand side. That's what we're doing. On the left-hand side, we multiply by 2. On the right-hand side, that means we also have to multiply by 2. From both sides, then we're getting x equals to 8. So to do one baby step further than this, now we're going to go on to number 7. Now I'm going to write something down. I do not want you to write this down. I said that to some people in my last class period, and right when I stopped and started erasing, they also were erasing. So I'm going to show you this just as a quick example. We're not going to do anything with it. Do not write this down. So the example, I always go back and forth whether I have to teach this. Well, we didn't have calculators, so this was the best way to do it. Since you have fractions in your calculator, I'm still not sure if it might not be easier just to solve it like any normal problem. So subtract 3 over 4x from both sides. Over 4 minus 3 over 2, 3 over 4, so that gives you 2 over 4. And then multiply both sides by 4 over 2. Whatever you want to do. Again, if you want to solve it like that, you can, because you can use a calculator. If you're good with your calculator, that's not a bad idea. But make sure you're still showing me your steps. Make sure you're still showing me. I can write this down because the way I still think it's easier to do it, especially once you get into the rhythm of it, is multiplying by the least common multiple. So again, our least common multiple for this one has to be 4 because we only have one denominator or one in the denominators. So writing this out with space, that's 3 over 4x plus 2 is equal to 5 over 4 x minus 3. And now we multiply everything by that least common multiple. So everything gets multiplied by that 4. That cancels. Oops, sorry. That's not what I wanted. That does cancel. We'll talk about that in a second, though. So if you have a 4 in the top and 4 in the bottom, they cancel. So 4 and 4 cancel. We're left with 3x. 4 times 2 is 8. 4 and 4 cancel. So we have 5x minus 12. The biggest mistake people make is they forget to multiply the 2 and the 3 by that 4. If you're going to multiply by 4, everything needs multiplied by 4. Broken record, and I'm not saying that this is easy, but this is something now we are pretty familiar with. We've done it a lot. So go through and solve this. Subtract 3x. Add 12 to both sides. Uh-oh. Divide by 2. I get my x is 10. And again, now to do one little baby step harder, now we have 2 fractions, but we have 2 different variables. I'm sorry, 2 different denominators. So for this, are nine. So before we did it like this, where canceled, so all we have left is a b. That's still true. That's still what we're doing. But now the only difference is we have a 9 in the numerator, but we have 3 in the denominator, so they don't cancel evenly. Instead, this is where you treat it like division. A divided by 3 is 3, so they cancel out, and you put a 3 in there. Times r is 15r. So last but not least here, then we solve this like normal. I knew I was going to make that mistake. So terms, that's 33 equal to 11. If I go sides by 3, you get r is equal to 11 over 3. That's not written out very well. I don't know if I said it to this class or not. I don't care if you put your answer as a decimal or a fraction. My rule of thumb is if you put it in a fraction, please reduce it. And if you put it in a decimal, make sure you round to 2 decimal places. There will be times that I tell you to do it differently. But if I don't tell you, it's a safe bet to go to 2 decimal places. I only divided by 3 instead of 33. Yes. That's funny. I thought it was anyway. Yeah, so I just divided by 3 instead of 33, so sorry, quick correction. Which 11 over 33 does reduce. So this one is either 1 over 3, or again, you could say negative 0.33 repeating. That's fine. Fraction. I always use decimals, but it was because again, the calculator didn't do fractions. Thank you for that. All right, the next one we'll do before I give you guys some to do on your own is number 9 up here. So this one, we have 2 different fractions, but the last one, when you had 2 fractions, one of them had a denominator that was your least common multiple. The least common multiple between 3 and 4 is 12. So multiply all those by 12. Oops. One in step 0, kind of in the same thing, where I multiply everything by my least multiple, but I kind of wrote it out with more room, but I wrote it out as I went. Again, I know some of you guys are going to just write it up here where you put 12 and parentheses 12. If you can do that, that's fine. Again, I just think one of the hard parts about this is staying organized. 12 divided by 3 is 4, so that's 4 times 2 is 8. Not doing well today. Sorry, you guys probably noticed this. Multiply the whole other side by 12. So 12 times 1/4 m, 12 times -1. Multiply by 12. I'm going to act like I did it on purpose because that's a common mistake, but that's the whole idea. You can't just say, oh, this question would be easier if we had a 12 in it. But you multiply both sides by that, and now you can work with that. So let's go back to this. 12 divided by 4 is 3, so we have 3 times 1 times m is 3m, and 12 times -1 is -12. And now it's like we've seen before. So now we're solving. M. Subtract 8 from both sides. 9m is equal to -20. And I'm getting the fraction. I think I should preface it with 20 over 9. Again, if you want to make that into a decimal, you can, but you cannot reduce that fraction at all. Any questions on any of this before I have you guys do those next 2? All right. Do the next 2 on your own. I'll give you a little bit of time to finish up, and then I will put the answers up here. All right. This is your answer for number 10 and 11. I should preface it with, I think. Number 10, I end up getting -4. Number 11, I end up getting -11 over 6. Does that look right to people? I'm pretty nervous because I caught like 54 mistakes in that second one. But at least I caught them. Any questions over these before we move on? Keep pulling it. There we go. So I don't know if I'll have time for you guys to do another one of these, so I'm going to do this one on number 14, and then we'll move on. Number 14 is now we have 3 fractions. But again, really the only difference, the only thing that makes this one harder is finding your least common multiple. Because once you have that, you do it the same thing as everything. 12, the least common multiple. It's by any of the -9 over 4. But all of them 12. 4 times 8, that should be 8. 4 times 8 times r is 32r. Twelve divided by 4, so we have negative 27. Cancels, that equals negative 5. Oh, I forgot one. Forgot that variable. So from here, keep solving it. 37 minus 27 is 5r is equal to negative 5. And so when you divide by negative 5, you get r is equal to positive 1. Negative 1. Don't know why I put that negative there. Any questions on this before we move on? So moving on to the next part. The next part is cross multiplication. A couple things you need to know about this. First off, you can only do it when you have two fractions that are equal to each other. If you have any more than that, you cannot do it. Got to be one fraction all by itself is equal to one fraction all by itself. Making sure you're solving this, so they've got to have an equal sign in the middle. So when you cross multiply, you take 7 times n, here times your denominator. The other cross. What's else with this? I will tell you. It doesn't matter at all. It doesn't matter whether you have the 6 times 5. That doesn't make any difference. I do it all different kinds, whichever way I think looks easier for us. We'll talk about it in number 16. But from here, now all you have to do is solve like normal. So if it's 7 multiplied by n, I divide both of them. 7 times n is 7. 5 times 6 is 30. If you want that as a decimal, 4.29. In my opinion, these are actually easier than I'm always tempted to start with. Again, the problem is a lot of people think this is easier, so they try to use this method on the other ones, and you can't. Only if there's one fraction is equal to one fraction. So this is what I was talking about earlier. I said 7 times n. I took this one times this one. Top times bottom. This is fine. Look at the right answer. But you'll end up with n plus 7 times 9. I don't like that way. If it was me, I would switch around because the order doesn't matter at all. I would put the 9 first. So 9 times n plus 7. And 4 times, oops, 4 times are 7. I would always use parentheses when I sub things in because the most common mistake with these problems is when people, they don't use parentheses, so they see 9n and they don't do anything with that 7. It also has to be multiplied by 9. So 9n plus 63 is equal to 4. Sorry, 4 times 7. Subtract 63 from both sides. 28, that's what that's supposed to say. 28 minus 63. Negative 35. And lastly, divide by that number. 35 divided by negative 9, that also I don't think reduces. And last but not least, this one has two binomials in it. Don't make this harder than it is. You doing plus 9 times 9. Oh. Times P minus 10. So now we distribute P plus 81 equal to 10P minus 100. And now we have a problem we can solve. Right? Subtract 10. Oh my goodness. 10. Oh. 9 minus 10 is negative 1P plus 8. Subtract 81 from both sides. By negative 1, that is changes to 5. Any questions on that before we move on? All right, go ahead and do number 18 on your own. I'll put the answers up here in a second, and then you can start on your worksheets. Yeah, we have like 5 minutes left. That'll work. All right, sorry that took a while, but that is my number 18 up there. If you have any questions, make sure you ask. Make sure you're doing exit tickets and whatnot.